Hello and welcome to episode 96 of the Wisdom from the Akasha Podcast. My name is Suzie, I am your host, and I'm an Akashic Records teacher and practitioner. Today I want to do a little bit of an overview, and it is going to be very much an overview of the topic of mystery schools and what they teach. And the reason for this is because what I see a lot in people's Akashic Records when I'm doing Akashic Records readings for people is they will often have lifetimes where they have been initiated into certain mystery schools. Now, most of those mystery schools will no longer exist, but I think it can be really helpful to understand what these mystery schools were or are in some cases, your connection to them and what you might have been learning in your initiations in those mystery schools to help your spiritual development in this lifetime. So this is a huge topic. If you particularly find mystery schools and what they teach fascinating, if you love this episode, I would definitely recommend starting your deeper exploration by reading a book called The Secret Teachings of All Ages. This is a book written by Manly P. Hall back in the 1920s. He went on a huge exploration of different traditions across the world and then compiled this book. He was only in his mid-20s, I believe, when he wrote this book, which is a fascinating overview of different teachings from different traditions and the connections between them. So I would definitely start there if you want to do some extra research on this topic. And now I want to get into my little bit of a discussion around this topic. So the first thing to know is that mystery schools existed everywhere in the world. Okay, so this is not specific to one place, one continent, or anything like that. Mystery schools have existed throughout the world over the years. For example, you may have come across the mystery schools of Greece, ancient Greece, and these would be the Eleusinian mysteries, the Dionysian mysteries, the Orphic mysteries, and the Samothracian mysteries. Apologies if I've pronounced any of those incorrectly. You may have heard of the mystery schools of ancient Egypt, so the mysteries of Isis and Osiris, the mysteries of Serapis. You may have heard of the mystery schools of Persia, so the mysteries of Mithras. You may have come across the mysteries of Ireland, which would be the Hibernian mysteries, or the British mysteries, which would be classed as the Druidic mysteries. And in Germany and Scandinavia, you have the Drotic mysteries. So we can see that mystery schools were not confined to one specific place and time. And this is important because oftentimes as souls, we're not very adventurous in respect of geographically where we choose to reincarnate. I have seen people, kind of go all over the place, but most of the time we tend to reincarnate in places that we're very familiar with because, as I've said before, from an Akashic perspective, one lifetime, even if you get to 100 years, is only a short amount of time. So we do tend to stay geographically in the same location. But it is often the case that you'll find yourself drawn to mysteries that are within a certain radius of your location. And of course, there are other mysteries other than these. These are the ones that people have predominantly heard about. Quick disclaimer here, I am not a part of any mystery school. I've not been initiated into any mystery school, so I do just want to say that. And what I'm sharing with you today is what I've learned through my Akashic Records work and then further investigation into various different esoteric texts. I just want to make that very clear. Some people will sometimes ask me if mystery schools still exist, and I'm sure they do. Okay, I couldn't say yes or no for definite. I'm sure they do. I'm sure a lot of the mystery schools that we look at in the Akashic Records no longer exist. I'm sure that in terms of the traditional sense of mystery school that we're going to look at today in respect of what mysteries they actually focus on, I think they're probably very few and far between, but I'm sure that they do still exist. How I understand it from my work in the Akashic Records is that some of the mystery schools went down a self-destructive path, which is something that happens a lot when you have a group of people together working towards an end. It's very difficult to keep something pure or to keep something on track because, of course, humans get involved, humans have egos, and there can be lots of infighting and things like that. So whether or not any of the traditional mystery schools still exist, I don't know. Maybe they do, but I'm sure that some have evolved over time. Also, I know that some of the what we would call secret societies now that we have now started off as what would be called traditional mystery schools and have morphed into secret societies. So that's my understanding as to what's happened to them, where they've gone, what's going on. Now I want to look at these mystery schools that did exist and that we know of, that have been documented and researched by people. What were they actually studying? What did people who go into these mystery schools actually learn? Now, an important distinction as well is that mystery schools were often split into mystery schools for men and mystery schools for women. And that's to do with different focuses of different mysteries and different ways of initiation based on the biological form that you're born into. So what were the mysteries that these mystery schools were investigating? What were you being initiated into? And my understanding is that Rudolf Steiner brings through this information at the start of the 1900s. And this was in a lecture that you can look up called Redemption and Liberation from 1906. And he explained that the 7 great mysteries that he brought forward were to be made public and explained and to receive a deeper understanding of in the 20th century. From what I understand, there was quite a bit of upset within the mystery school community around Rudolf Steiner letting this information be made available to the public at the time. And he defended it by saying that these things were meant to be brought forward and disclosed. So the 7 mysteries that Rudolf Steiner highlights that the ancient mystery schools and mystery schools at that time were working with are the mystery of the abyss, the mystery of the number, the mystery of alchemy, the mystery of death, the mystery of evil, the mystery of the word or the logos, and then the mystery of divine bliss. And the mystery of divine bliss was considered to be the most occult of the 7. If you're familiar with Rudolf Steiner's work, what you'll know is that Rudolf Steiner also looked at periods within civilization as epochs. We see in the yogic traditions different civilizations and times being split into yugas, and this is completely normal in spiritual and esoteric circles to split them into times. What's interesting about what Rudolf Steiner brought forward is that he essentially asserted that each of the epochs was dedicated to an unfolding of a specific mystery. And if we look at the time that we are currently in, we are in what Rudolf Steiner would call the 5th post-Atlantean epoch, and this is the mystery of evil, as we've just heard. Of course, this is only Rudolf Steiner's perspective in respect of the epochs. Different traditions have different ways of looking at it. Even within different traditions, there's discussions around has certain epochs ended. So, for example, you'll see some proponents of yogic traditions stating that the Kali Yuga, which is the period that's seen as the Dark Ages, so characterized by things like excessive hedonism, excessive materialism, egotism, and spiritual ignorance, that actually ended in 1899 and that we're now going into a higher age. Other yogic practitioners and teachers will tell you that the Kali Yuga has not ended and we're still in it. There is no definitive agreed date and time. Same with Rudolf Steiner's teachings. He was bringing through his perspective. As always, take what you want from things, leave what you don't. But let's get into a little bit of an overview about what these 7 mysteries that Rudolf Steiner highlighted are and how you can see certain teachings that maybe you're interested in are connected to each of these mysteries. The first mystery is the mystery of the abyss, and this, of course, is a supernatural or non-material phenomenon because we cannot have a bottomless pit, which is what an abyss is in physical reality. This is this idea that there was this nothingness or no-thingness that existed prior to creation. It's out of this nothingness, this void, came creation. This nothingness was seen as containing all that is. And you'll see a lot of talk about this void or this abyss in a lot of the Eastern esoteric teachings. And Sometimes you'll see the mystery of the abyss being referred to as part of the death process and then needing to cross over the abyss or cross through the etheric plane, which is often associated with the abyss, into the astral plane and beyond. Now, depending upon the tradition, is going to depend upon how they look upon this abyss process and also how to prepare, because of course, let's remember that the mystery schools used to perform certain rites and rituals for you to come into contact with these mysteries. And there were lesser mysteries and greater mysteries. So depending on how they saw it would then determine the experience that you had as initiation to come into contact with the mystery of the abyss. The second mystery is the mystery of the number. And this is one that you will see a lot in spiritual community and discussions and teachings. And this is based on the idea that mind is non-physical and that your mind, or the mind, is a reflection of the universal mind, which is a reflection of the eternal mind of the one divine creator. And the reason that this is important is because numbers, pure numbers, can only exist in the mind. They are not physical reality. You can represent what, for example, one is by showing one apple or one cupcake, but one itself is not a tangible thing. So this is where this mystery of number comes in. And most prominent in respect of mystery school teachings was Pythagoras, in respect of really looking into numbers and the numbers being a reflection of ultimately divine creator. It's this idea that we can understand ourselves and the cosmos through number. And we see this a lot in spiritual teachings through things such as numerology, which assigns certain numbers certain meanings. There's a branch of fourth way teachings that are very mathematically geared, sacred geometry, of course. And then throughout spiritual traditions, you'll see reference to different numbers. So 7, for example, comes up a lot. You'll see it in the Bible. You'll see it in Rudolf Steiner's work and divisions into periods of 7. Of course, we have the 7 mysteries as well. The number 12 is another one. 33, of course, is another one that comes up across different traditions, different teachings. The Hermetic principle of polarity, of course, is an expression of the number 2. And number 3 comes up across spiritual traditions in the law of 3 with the fourth way teachings, or the trinities or the triads. So we see numbers being used as a way of understanding certain aspects of the cosmos, again, throughout different traditions. And those teachings come from this mystery of the number. The third mystery, which I know lots of you will be familiar with, is the mystery of alchemy. Alchemy is something you absolutely will have heard me talk about here on the podcast, and we can trace the mystery of alchemy back to ancient Egypt, specifically within Alexandria. And the big name within this mystery is Hermes. And of course, then branches of Rosicrucians and also teachings within Middle Eastern traditions. The aims behind Hermetic alchemy, so alchemy associated with Hermes, are around transmuting lead into gold, seeking the philosopher's stone, creating an elixir of immortality, developing a cure-all panacea, and finding a universal solvent. So this is how alchemy was seen in those traditions. Very famous teaching that you may have come across in respect of Hermetic alchemy is, of course, the Kybalion, which is written in 1940s. Certain things that you may have come across that associate to this third mystery, the mystery of alchemy, would be things like raising the vibration or transmutation, because the idea with the mystery of alchemy is that you can essentially take certain aspects, transmute them, alchemize them, and put them into higher aspects. So turning lead into gold, not materially, not actually taking a piece of lead and turning it into gold, but internally. And this is very much connected to and expressed in the Hermetic principle of polarity, where it talks about different aspects being essentially two sides of the same coin. So, for example, transmuting hate into love, sorrow into joy. And in the Hermetic teachings, this is done through repeated and concentrated willpower, that you're able to transmute these negative into higher emotions. So you'll see a lot of the more New Age spiritual teachings are actually based in the mystery of alchemy or these Hermetic traditions. Mystery number 4 is the mystery of death. And again, this is a huge topic. We see a lot more in the Eastern traditions than we do in the Western traditions around the mystery of death. Of course, this involves conversations around death, around karma, around the death process. So you have the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and what they represent. You have teachings around reincarnation, resurrection, and ascension. These are all teachings and topics that you're going to dive into when you're looking at the mystery of death. The 5th mystery, as I mentioned before, is the mystery of evil. And this is a conversation that includes free will versus determinism. Why, if we have an all-powerful, all-knowing, almighty creator, does evil still exist? How is evil a necessary evolutionary force? Okay. And what is evil? Evil being put forward as anything essentially that goes against our evolution as a soul, our evolution as a cosmos, anything that goes against divine union. So the mystery of evil is a big one. There's lots of different teachings in that one as well that you'll come across on your spiritual journey. The 6th mystery is the mystery of the Logos. And this is, of course, best represented in the Bible line, in the beginning was the Word. And this word is very important, this Logos. And this mystery is based on the principle that there is understood to be a rational underlying structure of the universe and the cosmos itself. And this is where we start to get into conversations around there potentially being an intermediary between God and the creation. And this intermediary is the Word or the Logos. This is where you're going to get into conversations around the Trinity of the Father being the divine being, the Mother being the divine knowing, and then the Son being the divine self-awareness that then moves into the Logos, the Word, or the I am, this divine self-concept. So this intermediary is seen as God's mental reflection of himself, and this Logos or this Word as vibrating at the highest possible level for all created beings. These teachings will also include a deeper dive into the universal triplicity, which we see across traditions, of will, wisdom, and love, and how will, wisdom, and love pervade all forms, all activities, and all beings within the cosmos, all to varying degrees, of course. And then the final mystery teaching is this mystery of divine bliss. And this is all around the teachings that divine love is intrinsically creative and all-giving, and that this one God, this creator, this source consciousness is reflected within all created reality. So I'm sure you can see through this conversation that across your readings and studies and everything that you're drawn to, you're going to be touching on different aspects of these mysteries. And I hope that by understanding the mysteries a little bit more now and understanding the connection to them, you can see which aspects you're currently most interested in and maybe give you a steer into what you want to study a little bit more at this time. So I hope you have found this episode helpful, and I look forward to seeing you next week for the next episode.